When it comes to the most dangerous fantasy names in the game, you better look no forward than today's episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. And even if that intro doesn't make sense, the top 5 fantasy centermen in the NHL today should be making sense on your squad. We're breaking it all down. So let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Another day closer to the puck drop on the upcoming NHL season means your fantasy draft likely right around the corner. That's why you're tapped into the latest edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Big Thursday edition, taking a look at the top 5 fantasy centermen in the NHL today. Shout out to the everydayers holding us down, making us your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket in YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Steele, sidebar, the start of the NFL season has been nothing short of a bloodbath. My goodness me, but it's not taking anything away from our attention on the fantasy draft prep for the NHL. And look, you spoke about Sidney Crosby yesterday outside your top 5. We're taking a look at the top 5 centermen. I'm intrigued to see who you have at number 5. And then I'm going to throw a little ode to Sid. Before I think you and I can both agree, the top 4 centermen in the fantasy game are almost set in stone. So it gives us a little bit of an opportunity here to talk about their teams. And for me, to gush a little bit more on my favorite player. However, before we get there, over to you, Mr. Rodin. Number 5, centerman, top 5 in the fantasy game.
Well, let me do a little bit of a serenation for one of my top centermen as well. A little ode to JT Miller.
Love this.
Top 5 centermen in the National Hockey League. In the fantasy hockey realm. We talked about this when we did our top 5 breakdown for every single NHL team. And of course, when we talked about the Vancouver Canucks, he finished. It doesn't matter what format you were playing. He was a top 5 player. He finished as a top 5 player in fantasy leagues last season. And he just fills out all those peripherals I love looking at and love talking about so much. He's great in the face-off circle, might I add, as well. 56.3% win percentage last season. He's been rocking over 53% for 5 straight seasons with the Vancouver Canucks. He brings the boom. He's a Banger League beauty, which we'll talk about Banger League beauties later in the month of September before season kicks off. 217 hits, 61 blocks, 194 shots. I would like to see that get to at least 200, 215, but I think he can do a lot more with that. But at least with the shot volume that he's shooting at, he's scoring at a great rate. 19.1% shooting percentage last year. I do see a little bit of a regression from JT Miller this next season. Obviously, that's going to kind of drop. But when you look at the past 4 seasons from him, 16.4, 14.2, 15.5, he's been in that realm on a very consistent basis. And he's, again, I've talked about players being able to hit their stride later in their career. And yes, I know there was a comment on the YouTube channel. You know, he was a point per game player at 26 years old, his first year in Vancouver. But look what he's done over the last 3 seasons. He is one of the best fantasy hockey assets you could ask for. And he doesn't get the credit he deserves because he doesn't have the sexy name that goes along with it, because his name is JT Miller. To me, I don't care what his name is. 103 points with the durability, the physicality, the shooting percentage. Again, everything adds up for me. He's top 5 in my area. He's got to be top 5. I don't care what anyone else says. For me, he's top 5.
I absolutely love that you have stuck to your guns on this player. And look, he made my top 10 list, and he deserves to be in that conversation for sure. I think, aside from the point you're making on peripherals, it's a little bit hard for me to have him in the top 5. I'm not going to sit here and nitpick you, though. I will say this. If I am nitpicking and throwing something out, this Demko Shilov situation, Steele, in the cage for the Vancouver Canucks, and this shouldn't really affect too much what JT Miller does at the other end of the ice and what he does best in terms of bringing that peripheral coverage. I'm starting to get a little concerned about these Vancouver Canucks. Maybe I'm reading into it too much. Maybe I'm drinking the Canadian hockey media Kool-Aid on this situation, but things aren't looking so rosy in the goaltending area. And this team, as much as we love it, they are going to need one of those goaltenders early to be healthy, if not both. It's looking like it's neither of those cases. I'm not here to talk about the Vancouver Canucks. I'm here to talk a little bit about someone named number 87, Sidney Crosby. You had him in at number 6, Steele, so there's no argument to be had here because I feel 6 is very respectable as well. Sidney Crosby just signed yet another team-friendly deal off of a 90-plus point season. There aren't many athletes in today's pro sports that will come off a season that successful and take the pay cut that he did. I'm not coming on here to talk about pay cuts either, Steele, but this man has left a lot of money on the table to try and allow his team around him to be better. That's not a caveat or a category in the fantasy game, but he's been bringing it there as well. And I think I've covered all the statistics and all the milestones and all the records of Sidney Crosby quite acutely, Steele. So I'm going to leave it at this. 94 points last year, 101 hits. He really was a fantasy dynamo, and I think he's going to bring it once again with the last point I'm going to make. That window in Pittsburgh is about to slam shut. And I think you're going to see another sensational year of Sid carrying this team because once the playoffs start, and if they are in there, all bets are off because Sid is one of the best in the business in the clutch performances. We all know this. However, he comes in at number 5 for me. You know how I feel about this player. We'll talk about a lot more of him during bets this season. Over to you for your number 4 or any comments on Sid.
Look, Sidney Crosby, again, what he's able to do, elevating his teammates and line mates, it doesn't matter who plays with him or who he plays with. He demands for better. He demands a high quality of hockey to play with him. And that's what they bring. And that's what he brings to the table throughout the 19, 20 plus seasons he's been in the National Hockey League. So I had him at number 6. You have him at number 5. Very, very close. Again, splitting hairs right there, but
yes, sir.
He's still a top 5 or top 10 centerman regardless, no matter what, at the age of 37 years old and 8.7 million. He loves that number. He continues to do it. So it's really funny when he does see when you do see that from Sidney Crosby. At number 4 on my list, I have Leon Draisaitl. Again, this is splitting hairs with some of the other centermen we're going to talk about in the top 5 list. But at number 4, I do have Leon. Again, very durable in the same sense of JT Miller. He could be a Banger League beauty if he was to bring the physicality and get that hit total up maybe close to 100. But as of right now, he's off the Banger League beauty list. But he's been very durable throughout his entire NHL career. Barely misses any hockey. You have to go back to his rookie season where he played 37 games. But even then, I mean, the most he's ever missed was 11 games back in 2019. Other than that, over the last 3 seasons, he's only missed 5 games. 5 seasons in the National Hockey League. Leon Draisaitl has had over 100 plus points in a season. He's a power play juggernaut. He gets everything done from that, below the circle. He could be pretty much below the goal line and still score. Leon Draisaitl is that good. He absolutely picks those corners. He picks his spots very, very well. Again, great in the faceoff circle, 56.9% last season, 58 hits, 217 shots. And again, when you play with Connor McDavid, the name Connor McDavid, the name Leon Draisaitl, and you now got Evan Bouchard as one of the top tier quarterbacking defensemen in the National Hockey League right now. Going to have a fantastic power play once again. Things just continue to add up. That's why Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid are both in the top 5 centerman list for fantasy hockey. So I have him at number 4.
I got Leon at 4 too, and I think honestly, Steele, the rest of this ranking is going to go very simply for us. And the conversation about, here we go, a little spice. If you're not on YouTube, make sure you got a little bit of that sass from my boy, Mr. Roden. Look, these 4 players that we're about to talk about, or the 3 after Leon, have been covered at length. Their fantasy value covered at length, and for good reason. But we are going to come on here once again and break it all down for you. Leon last year in the postseason in the Stanley Cup, especially, so banged up. That was clear. Do not let his lack of performance in those last 5 or 6 games impact where you take this player. He probably was dealing with 2 or 3 injuries from what you read into. He should be a top 5 fantasy hockey draft choice, even after signing the big deal. We'll talk about some more players right after the break, keeping today's episode short and sweet, try and get you guys in and out in 30 minutes with all of the fantasy news that you need, including giving a shout out to our friends from FanDuel Sportsbook. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, something a little bit different for y'all. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube or YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment. Cancel anytime. Visit FanDuel.com right now, America's #1 sportsbook.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Make sure you go enjoy the Locked On NHL podcast for your second listen of the day. Locked On NHL provides you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day, with a local insight on every team across the league. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Continuing the top 5 or top 10 centerman for fantasy hockey in the 2024-25 season. At number 3, I've got our boy, Auston Matthews, makes it into the top 3, comes in that 3rd position. And I mean, he has to be. 69 goals last year, 1 short from 70, which would have been absolutely unreal. 2nd time in his career, he's had over 100+ points in a season. He's going to do that again this upcoming year. 51 even strength goals. Even though he's great on the power play, he does it 5-on-5 just better. It's absolutely insane what he's able to do, the way he's able to maneuver around the ice, change the shot angles in a split second. He's got the best wrist shot in the game right now, undeniably so. 369 shots last year with an 18.7 shooting percentage. Again, I think that's going to remain just as high this next year. That's how good he is, Auston Matthews. 93 blocks, 90 hits. He does it all for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yes,
of course,
sir.
obviously, you've got William Nylander in full force now, working out and developing his two-way game, bringing some more moves into his arsenal. Mitch Marner, he heard the criticism in the offseason. He's heard everything that happened in the playoffs. He's going to come back with an attitude, looking for a contract extension potentially with the Toronto Maple Leafs the year after this. And then I know, we talked about this. I actually called this. We were still looking at some unrestricted free agents coming up. And I was like, hey, Max Pacioretty's still out there. And I would not mind Max Pacioretty in the top 6 forward group. I hope they sign him. I think he would be great in the top 6. Obviously, some injury concern with this player, back-to-back Achilles tears, very close to one another after the 6-month rehab that he went through, both with the Carolina Hurricanes, then once with the Washington Capitals. So a lot to be worried about with him. But I think, again, the veteran presence in that top 6 group, I still think he has an edge to his game. When he plays, he is a very great player to play along with. And again, knock on wood, all things happen, or all things considered. If he stays healthy, I think there's no question that he can get 25 goals this upcoming season, playing alongside Marner, Nylander, and Auston Matthews.
I wasn't expecting to talk about Max Pacioretty on the top 5 fantasy centerman episode, my good friend, Mr. Roden. However, I don't hate the take. Let's talk about it a little bit more when we talk about the Maple Leafs and our division rankings.
Yes.
I want to talk about Auston Matthews' hot minute. 69 goals isn't going to happen again. I just think that there will be.
70 is going to happen.
I'm not going to. Well, I hope so. I think the safer expectation would be around the 60 mark, which is still cements him at number 3 on this list. I think 70 goals is obviously, clearly in his realm. I just would be much more comfortable expecting and projecting, 55 to 60, which still I think makes him a slam dunk number 3 fantasy centerman. He rounded out his 200-foot game steal. He's got the captaincy now. None of those things really, I don't think are going to translate necessarily into different fantasy output. It's just all eyes are on this man, number 34, if they weren't on him before. And I'm excited to see what he does. And I think he's going to do more of the same. Spectacular release, spectacular positional play, and now he's starting to be a bee in the bonnet of the opposition. Let's talk about a couple of more players, though. I'll throw it back over to you because, look, Nathan MacKinnon, Connor McDavid, that's 2-1 for sure. Just how it is headed into the season. However, at points in last season, the way Nathan MacKinnon was playing, I think you yourself said it's time to maybe consider Nathan MacKinnon as the best fantasy player in the game. And I can't help but feel, Steele, these guys are going to go toe-to-toe once again. It's Mac Daddy at 2, McJesus at 1. But what's your take on these guys going toe-to-toe once again? Because I do think MacKinnon, if he can stay healthy, I know that's a caveat with a guy who plays the edge he does. I think he can rival McDavid in terms of offensive or fantasy value. That's just how good he is.
Look, I also said it wasn't just fantasy hockey. I think it was time to consider Nathan MacKinnon as the best hockey player in the National Hockey League as well. The way that he was playing, and you did say it yourself. The caveat of staying healthy with Nathan MacKinnon. This was the first time since 2018 that Nathan MacKinnon has played a full 82-game regular season. So he has been banged up. Not like he's missing 20 games a season, but, banged up, missing 5, 10, maybe 15 games on the longer side. But he has missed some time to injury throughout the years. But this is the first time that we've seen him fully healthy, rocking with the team that he's got offensively. And I mean, when you look at the Edmonton Oilers, they're very similar in the sense to the Colorado Avalanche. You have that 1-2 power punch of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. You have the 1-2 power punch of Mikko Rantanen and Nathan MacKinnon. Then you also have the young studs, Cale Makar and Evan Bouchard, quarterbacking the power play. You've got pieces around them to work and fill in those areas where you need the help on the depth, on the bottom 6 or in the bottom D pairing. It's Stuart Skinner, obviously, and Alexander Gorgiev. You're going to get a bunch of wins with those guys. So I view them the very same. But for me, I have Connor McDavid number 2, and I have Nathan MacKinnon number 1.
For real? You do?
I have Nathan MacKinnon number 1 this upcoming season. Look, it's going to be an
absolute
I
teed
battle.
That up nicely for you. We didn't even plan that.
You absolutely did. And look, this is going to be an absolute battle, just like you said. But at number 2, I have Connor McDavid. And I said it last year. Connor McDavid's bread and butter is playmaking, passing the puck, facilitating his line mates and teammates to elevate their game and have those great scoring chances in front of the net, setting them up, cross crease passes with an open net to just bury it in the mesh. So for me, that's the bread and butter. And we saw that. Look at the shot volume from McDavid from 2022 to 2023. He had 352 shots 2 seasons ago, obviously with the 64 goals. And that dropped down to 263, almost 100 less shots on net for Connor McDavid. But what happened? 100 plus assists. The goal total dropped from 64 to 32. Obviously, the point total dropped from 153 to 132. He still missed 6 games that season. But, again, for me, that's a big thing of the peripheral categories, which puts Nathan MacKinnon over the top in this sense. 405 shots from Nathan MacKinnon this last year, 12.6 shooting percentage, but he had 51 goals, 140 points. Again, if we look at Nathan MacKinnon and if he stays healthy, he would have at least 5 or 6 seasons now with over 100 plus points if he played close to a full 82 game regular season. 99 points in 82 games, 93 points in 69, 88 in 65, 97 in 74. I mean, he's right there, if not, again, a little bit better than Connor McDavid right now. So for me, I'm going with McDavid at number 2. I know I said this in the past, that if you're not taking Connor McDavid number 1, there's something wrong with you. There might be something wrong with me, but I'm rocking with Mac Daddy over there at the number 1 spot.
I need to collect myself. I think we should probably go to break. So I can have a sip on this Michelob Ultra and collect myself, Steele. I don't know what you're trying to do to this old guy here. The late night episode recordings are already a bit of a challenge. Hey-o. And you just threw me a hurdle, curveball. I don't know what that I need to regroup on here. Why don't you take us to break? Let's discuss the rest of this bombshell that my co-host has just dropped on us. I want to talk about it a little bit more, Steele. Take us to break, brother. Maybe let's talk about those listener leagues. You know what it is, guys. This is your source for fantasy hockey.
Everything you need to know for this upcoming season right here on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. And of course, everything in the top 2 with Connor McDavid and Nathan MacKinnon coming up next. This episode is also brought to you by Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when buying tickets to your next big event. That's why Flip and I always use the Game Time app. Game Time is the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. Game Time actually has a great new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase, and you can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or your event. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Flip and I appreciate all that love and support you show us Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning is when you can find our episodes. Flip, I know I threw you for a whirlwind over there with that take. Nathan,
I don't think I'm the only one still.
You might not be the only one, but hey, look, we have to consider that now. We definitely have to consider that. Nathan MacKinnon just dropped 140 points in a full 82-game regular season. 55 hits, 69 blocks, 405 shots, a career high for him. Again, when you have players like Mikko Rantanen, Cale Makar, maybe Gabriel Landeskog comes back at some point in this season as well. This is an offensive group to walk in. You and I both like Casey Middlestat as that second-line center in that area as well. Our Terry Lehkonen does pretty well on the power play,
Lehkonen's not going to be starting the year, I don't think, just by the way.
No, he's not. He's hurt. But again, like we rock with him when he's in the lineup. Obviously, everything that's gone on with Valerian Nichushkin, when he's in the lineup, he's a pretty solid guy. He won't be back for a long time, but regardless, Mikko Rantanen and Nathan MacKinnon are top 2 dogs in the West right there with Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid. Have to consider them as one of the top 2 duos in the league as well.
You're not off the deep end here, Steele. And yes, they are definitely one of the top 2 duos.
I might be by myself, though, but I'm not off the deep end.
This is something that I was not prepared for. Look, the Edmonton Oilers also, and I find this intriguing. I wanted to mention this earlier in the episode. Basically, every single Canadian hockey market is feeling really great about this season. It's hilarious. Every fan base, every analyst talking about their team, right? From the Montreal Canadiens to the Ottawa Senators, who were a doormat last year, all the way through to the Flames, Leafs, and everybody. Everyone's feeling great about what's happening. I
don't know if the Flames are feeling great though.
Okay, maybe that's the one outlier, but you know what I'm saying. And it's like the Edmonton Oilers, though, in that breath, are definitely one of those winners of the offseason, bringing in Jeff Skinner and Victor Arvidsson into a dominant force that they already had in the forward group. So I'm not going to say that the Colorado Avalanche won't have another potent offensive season, but there's a lot more concerns about their goaltending and maybe some of the bigger question marks than the question marks on the Edmonton Oilers. This sometimes can translate into bigger seasons for their players. That's how small we got to splice hairs with this situation, Steele. So I'm going to back you up and agree with you on it's close. For sure. And Nathan MacKinnon, my goodness me, for sure deserves this kind of love. However, also 76 games for McDavid, 6 less games. Maybe he plays 82 next year, and he will kind of finish with that quote-unquote slightly better fantasy, not quote-unquote, better fantasy output. I think I'm getting a little tired here, and I think all I need to say is this. I got McDavid at 1. I appreciate that you went out there on a limb and put Mac Daddy at number 1. I'm intrigued to hear what our listeners have to say. For me, it's got to be McJesus, but I am so ready, and I need now. It's not like I'm ready. I need this season to start, Steele, because I'm starting to run out of adjectives to describe some of these best players in the game. If you can get 1 or 2 of these guys on this list, you're sitting pretty.
Sitting pretty indeed. And, I think it will start to feel a lot more real once we get everything solidified and finalized for our listeners leagues by the end of the week. Again, September 20th, everything will be finalized. All 16 teams. Make sure you're checking your email for that invite. Flip and I will be doing the draw on September 20th, so you can expect an email and an invite if you have been selected in that random draw on September 20th. So make sure you're staying tuned for all of that as well. But it will feel a lot more real once we get all of that, all those leads.
I hope so.
And moving forward. But I'm with you. Puck drop should come a lot sooner than October 4th. But we're ready for it. We're going to wait patiently like some good hockey fans over here. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Make sure, again, you go check out the Locked On NHL Podcast, where the season never ends, providing national expertise with a local perspective. You can find the link in the description below, so you don't have to search for it. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Once again, from both Flip and I, we wish you good luck with your fantasy leagues this season. We wish you good luck with all your bets this fall, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow for our top 10 left winger fantasy hockey edition.
Peace.